Well, someone had Breath of the Wild running on PC the day it came out.
Well, that didn't take long.
Welcome to Cartridge-Based Radio.
Cartridge-Based Radio.
Oh, yeah. I gotta get that brand recognition down.
Yes. We're promoting our brand.
This is our 1 month. We've been doing this for a whole month and haven't quit. Big milestone, yeah?
Yeah, I quit most things after less than a month.
Like an hour tops.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is too hard.
This requires effort.
Effort is for the strong. So we've gathered here today to pay our last respects to Raccoon City. So, Resident Evil 3. We're going to talk about Resident Evil 3. We're probably going to spill a little bit over into 2 and 1.
Yes.
Because you kind of have to talk about those to get to 3.
Wait, does that mean there's going to be spoilers?
Yes. If you haven't played Resident Evil 3, stop right now. Because we're going to spoil the ending. What do you know of Resident Evil 3?
Came out in 1999. Was really well reviewed, but not exactly a fan favorite. Which is kind of interesting. A lot of the reviews that came out at the time, this is one of the best ones. Everything looks better. The Nemesis, adds an ongoing threat. It's really cool. But I don't think it's really anybody's favorite Resident Evil game. And when 4 came out, a lot of people were like, oh, finally, the series got back to not sucking like it did for Nemesis. So it's kind of weird in that way that it was critically well regarded and it sold pretty well, but I don't think a lot of people think back on it all that fondly.
I am one of those people who think back on it fondly. I remember playing at the time and I thought, this is actually the most amazing Resident Evil I played. I was shouted down by quite a few people because they claimed that 2 was the best. Later on, yes, 4 did change some things and it was pretty fantastic. In my replay this week, I put in 6 hours of it. I think it might be the best game in that original trilogy.
Okay.
Based solely on the Nemesis system. And the fact that most modern horror games owe a lot to Resident Evil 3. Because I don't know if you've ever played Outlast or Amnesia, The Dark Descent.
I think I watched my brother play Outlast for a while. So I've seen it.
The main horror hook in those two games is this unrelenting creature that's just following you at all times. You don't know when it's gonna just pop out of a wall and grab you. And that basically, before anyone did it, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis did that with the Nemesis. It's a horrible name for a character, but just you never knew when I actually jumped in a scene while playing Resident Evil 3. It's like, this game can't get me, and then he just came through a wall and I was like, oh, where'd my control go? It's not in my hands anymore.
Isn't it kind of like we've seen that before in Double Dragon? Like at any moment, a Bobo could come crashing through a wall and just pick you up and throw you around and ruin your day. So Nemesis is kind of like an updated version of a Bobo if you think about it.
He is, but just this Nemesis doesn't move fast. I mean, you can outrun it day and night.
Yeah.
But it's just this slow plodding thing because it knows it's going to kill you eventually. And it slowly works its way towards you. And there's just this constant tension in the back of your mind of when is the Nemesis going to show up and just wreck everything I'm working on right now. And I know now through replay that they know exactly when you've done a certain task in a certain area, and that's the time to pop up the Nemesis and push you on. But I think it's that pressure to keep you moving forward that makes Nemesis an actual pretty special Resident Evil game.
So Nemesis is this lurking threat in the background that you don't always think about actively, but it's kind of in the back of your mind that it could kill you at any moment. It's like the heart disease of video game enemies.
Yeah, it is. It's It's Far Cry 2's Malaria.
Oh, man. So many refugees that I saved to put off malaria death for just a little bit longer so that I could be gunned down at a random checkpoint instead.
That's a whole different show right there. But the first thing I noticed when replaying Resident Evil 3 that I didn't notice the first time around was this game was not designed by someone who has ever set foot in the United States, because there is not a single city in the United States that is laid out like a old European city. But Raccoon City is straight up like curved streets that lead into a dead-end alley. Looks like it's painted for a car to go down there, but no car's gonna fit down there. And just these weird cutbacks and stores built into the middle of streets. I don't know what's going on in this town.
Maybe, have you ever been to Leavenworth? You're a Washington resident. Have you ever taken the trip up to Leavenworth?
Yes.
Maybe they were kind of going for a Leavenworth thing where they're just like, we're going to make our town look like a European town, and then tourists will come, and then we can eat their brains.
That really sums up Leavenworth. Except they're like, hey, have a beer. Have another beer. And then like 6 hours later, you're like, where am I? Am I in Germany? You sort of are.
I can't tell the difference anymore.
Resident Evil 3 really has that vibe of that the map just makes no sense. As far as it goes for an American town, I don't know if people outside the US even notice this. I found it slightly bizarre.
You know, last week when we were talking about Mega Man, we got into kind of the layout of Woodman Stage. And we could probably just have an entire separate podcast every week where we talk about the geography going on in different video games, and it would just be the most appealing geography-based podcast out there right now.
Yeah, maybe we should get a musical stinger when we start talking about, hey, the geometry in this game or the level layout is a little wonked. There was one thing I did notice about this. We had a talk how the protagonist, no matter who you're playing in game, is the bad guy. I don't think Jill is the bad guy in this story, because this is the first time you're not like actively mowing down a city. You're just kind of trying to get out of the worst situation you possibly can.
So we have a first for cartridge-based radio in that the protagonist is actually like not a vicious murderer or some other kind of horrible thing.
So I guess Jill gets an award.
For not being terrible.
Yes. First annual. I'm not sure why when getting prepared to go escape Raccoon City, she thought, you know what would be great is tube tops and Daisy Duke shorts with a hoodie wrapped around my waist. Because didn't she wear like armor in the first game? Like a uniform?
Yeah, it was like this kind of paramilitary cop uniform that had body armor and a beret, I think. And it was sort of like this like militaristic, semi-fascist, like secret police uniform. Yeah, it doesn't seem like sex appeal is going to be the most useful thing when you're escaping a city that's overrun by, you know, zombies and stuff. They're not going to be like, oh, well, you're pretty, and I'm going to flirt with you and let you escape the city uneaten. That's kind of not a high priority for a zombie.
Yeah, the nemesis isn't walking up to you and asking you for your phone number. He just keeps saying stars over and over.
Maybe that's his phone number. You just hit the star button a bunch of times, and the nemesis answers it. Like, oh.
And all he can say is stars. Like, how long were they building the nemesis? And like, the only thing we need to teach it is the word stars, because they're the ones working against the Umbrella Corporation. This seems like a terrible use of resources.
Yeah, you could teach him a couple more words, and then he could fight the stars, and also, you know, anything you want. Tow truck drivers, be like, that guy towed my car. And send the nemesis after it, be like, tow truck drivers.
This rental company ripped me off. Budget. So, you know, I really don't know why she's running around I mean, if that's what she's comfortable in, that's what she's comfortable in. But all the guys are just decked out in like near full plate armor, and she's like, I've got a 44 Magnum and no pockets. Maybe the hoodie might have a pocket in it, and that's where she's storing all her stuff.
Well, I mean, it probably has more to do with that these games were designed for teenage boys, and that's probably what they wanted. And even, I mean, beyond that demographic, it's kind of just, different genders kind of find different things attractive. So, to a man, a scantily clad, attractive woman, is desirable. But a woman, what they find attractive is, a dude who's like totally covered in fake armor and you can't actually see what he looks like at all. That's what every woman wants, is a guy that she doesn't even know what he looks like. He's like, he's just a lump of flesh under all that armor. That's what gets the girls going. You can trust me, I have been turned down for a lot of dates in my life.
Because of your body armor?
Because of my lack of body armor, obviously. Because of my body.
Sick burn. As you said, this was designed for a younger demographic, and going back in, like I said before, I started wondering about the infrastructure layout of the city. How come their fire hydrants are European? Because this city's in Colorado, which is not in Europe. And then there's flyers about how great the Umbrella Corporation is, because they came in and started paying for everything. And as long as we respect Umbrella, our city will be great. That seems kind of fascist. I don't know.
A little bit. Umbrella's corporate profit-making strategy is insane. They just come in, they dump all this money into Raccoon City to kind of build it in their own image or whatever. And they're manufacturing pharmaceuticals, but they don't seem like they actually have made any. They're creating a bunch of viruses that don't seem to have much of a market value. Normally the way a business works is it is focused solely on profits. Everything else is secondary. And, that can lead to some alarming situations, but it's predictable. If you don't like the way a company's doing something, you can change the law so that those things aren't profitable anymore and they'll stop doing them. And Umbrella just seems to have thrown all that out the window, and they're like, we're going to buy a town and we're going to develop weapons that we're not going to sell or anything. We're just going to give them away for free. We're going to leak this virus all over the place and kill a bunch of people. And that's all well and good and evil, but at some point the shareholders have to be like, how come we didn't make any money? And why do we own a town?
You have to think that the money it takes to buy a town, Umbrella has to have been around for a while. So they had to at one point be making enough money to buy a town. I guess the surrounding forest area, they got a lot of payoff, or, they got to grease a lot of palms to make people look the other way. I believe the police department had to be in on, just ignore what Umbrella's doing. It's cool over there. There's a mansion up in the hills. Just don't go there. Which then doesn't explain where STARS came from, because in Resident Evil 3, STARS has like their own secret little base inside the police station.
If I'm the CFO of Umbrella, the first thing I want to know is, why did we buy a mansion? What does a pharmaceutical company need with a mansion?
Oh, sweet parties for your friends and celebrities.
I'd just be having a fit. You can't just go throwing money around like this. There's other, not specifically evil pharmaceutical companies that are competing with us and making all the money, and we're just going broke with our ski resort towns and, cops on the payroll. that we're not really using for anything other than to lure victims to our experimental viruses that we have no way of selling.
And there was no point where Pfizer looked at Umbrella Corporations like, oh, they are doing it right. They own a town and a mansion. We just have erection medicine.
Yeah. I would love to see companies will put out like a portfolio of like what they do for investors. And, I worked for a company once that made medical devices and like weapons guidance systems and a bunch of other things. And each thing had its own little section with glossy photos. You'd see like a cruise missile and they'd be like, yeah, we made the thing that steers that. And there'd be like a medical device and, oh, we make these also for when you get hit by the cruise missile. I couldn't imagine like Umbrella putting out like a glossy catalog full of like photos of, Living Dead, and the Nemesis and the Tyrant and being like, hey, you want to get on board this train because we have no way of making money and we might destroy the world.
And at the same time, if you don't think Raccoon City's nice, there's a town in Europe that Leon went to that they seem to be in control of that too. What is their business strategy? I am now confused. I didn't think about this before, but what is their end game?
Controlling small towns doesn't get you profits. If they owned all the land in the town and then they were charging rent or something and developing it and, leasing out office space or something, maybe. But just like we own all this land and the people live here and we infect them with diseases and then they don't pay rent and they eat each other, there's no profits there.
And we definitely know in Resident Evil 3, they're not renting the land because the pickup you find and read really says, Umbrella's paid for everything, we just live here and be happy. So I don't know if that was some sort of cover to show, oh, look, Umbrella's making life better in this town. Well, underneath the town they have a secret lab full of zombies. This all seems irresponsible.
Yeah, not just morally, but just from a business perspective, I'm very upset about this. It just, it bothers me that there's such blatant disregard for the fiscal well-being of the company and the shareholders.
And it did not end well, I imagine, for Umbrella. I guess the beginning of Code Veronica, which I did not really think was a good follow-up to the original Resident Evil trilogy. I played it before I read a review about it, and I got stuck, and the review basically said, hey, if you don't take a rocket launcher onto the airplane at the end of Disc 1, you can't get to Disc 2.
That's some good design right there.
You're trying to knock that guy out the door, and you gotta hit him to the back of the plane and then eject the cargo. And it knocks him out, and then it's, load disc 2. But if you don't have the rocket launcher, you can't get him far enough back into the airplane to shoot the box at him to knock him out. So I spent like 2 days just running and standing at the very back of the plane and waiting for him to get to me, and then running back and shooting the cargo launcher and missing him. I was like, how much cargo does this airplane have? Why doesn't the guy like pull up and help me here? So I never finished Code Veronica due to seeing red and anger and not wanting to get all the way back to that part just to have a rocket launcher.
Now, is Code Veronica the one that opens on like some tropical island that one of the characters has been imprisoned on?
It is the red-haired girl.
Okay.
Is it Leon's sister?
Maybe?
Is she, well, it starts with her, like, breaking into Umbrella and they shoot up the side of the building with a helicopter trying to stop her because she's got data, which, again, another Umbrella mistake. Why do they have an attack helicopter on call, and if someone breaks in, you just light up the side of the building? Maybe hire some security guards?
Yeah, but don't have them shoot up your own building. Where all your expensive things are. maybe don't have them murder trespassers. That's not really that's an escalation that wouldn't hold up in a court of law. And be like, oh, this person broke into our company and stole some data, so we shot her with a helicopter gunship. You probably would still have some legal liability there.
And she's running down a hallway. You just put a security guard at one end of the hallway and a security guard at the other end of the hallway with a gun. And she has to stop running because she can only take out one of them before the other shoots her. You don't need an attack helicopter to blow up your building.
I just remember that game opening with like a helicopter landing in this tropical island and they've captured her. And it's just like, you have an island with a secret prison? Just why? just turn her over to the police. They already have all those things. You don't have to buy them.
And I believe they have a secret ice base in Code Veronica. Because I was told after you escape the tropical island, you go to an ice base. So that either has to be one of the poles or in Alaska. So they have a plot of land in those places.
They have a tropical island to put their prisoners, which none of that makes any sense. Like, first of all, you shouldn't be capturing people, and like if you or I broke into the mall and got caught, they wouldn't take us to a tropical island that the mall owns. They just hand us over to the police. Even if you were just capturing people, and how often are people breaking into Umbrella that you need to set up your own prison system? You could just like get a warehouse in Idaho or something and not have to fly all the way to the Caribbean or whatever.
It would almost be better to hand her over to the police because she'd say, oh, they have a secret zombie project, and then no one believes you and you can just be like, whatever she's talking about, we're Umbrella, the good guys.
We gave all of you a free town.
What's Umbrella done for you? They brought a TGI Fridays into Raccoon City. Oh, yay.
That'll look really great on the investor prospectus. Look at this Fridays that we own.
It's like, so instead of making profit, you spent money to bring another business's franchise into our town. Exactly.
All Umbrella wanted to do was be evil and create super weapons, and now they own a town. They must own utility companies to, have electricity and garbage disposal. Now they have to own chain restaurants so that people have places to eat. So they own a bunch of TGI Fridays and Applebee's franchises. Yeah, I think they're really...
Starbucks.
Yeah, they must own half a dozen Starbucks franchises. It's really... They're losing focus. You don't want to control a town. It's so many things to keep track of.
Maybe there was someone on the board who knew about the zombies in the secret base or under the mansion or whatever, and he felt really bad about it because he knew, hey, we're going to end the world with this virus. So he's like, we should set up a town and maybe get a tropical island, because before the apocalypse, he wanted to personally feel good by giving people a free town to live, utility, worry-free, rent-free, just live in this town and be happy right before you die horribly as a zombie.
And given those two options, yeah, I bought a house about a year ago, so I've been making mortgage payments for about a year, and given the choice between free housing, but you die horribly as a zombie eventually, or pay for your housing and that doesn't happen, I gotta admit, I'm kind of on the fence, honestly. If someone offered me that as a proposition, I'd be like, well, I wouldn't have to make these mortgage payments anymore.
And I mean, it's sure when you're getting ripped apart by the zombies, it's going to hurt a lot. It's going to be terrifying, but then it's over.
Yeah.
The mortgage payments never stop.
Oh, no.
It's like the bank is a really slow zombie.
Perhaps it is. Maybe the nemesis is a stand-in for the bank. I thought it was symbolic of heart disease, but it's actually just debt and mortgages and banks.
Loans.
Coming back to the Nemesis, the Nemesis is the kind of character that if you were playing like make-believe Resident Evil with a little kid, that's the enemy that they would come up with. Be like, oh, I shot you, you're dead. And the kid be like, no, because I dodge shots and I have a missile launcher and you can't even kill me. If you kill me, I just go away and come back later. And I'm super tough.
I forgot about the missile launcher until he hit me in the back of the head with it in the police station. And then she stood up and I was like, oh, you do not come back from that, Jill. That's a one-way trip right there. I mean, I had hardly any health, but if you get shot in the back with an RPG, you die. It's the law. And what's with the Nemesis's black leather coat? Who was like, you know what would make this thing look pretty cool is I saw the Matrix and they had these black leather coats and we should put it on our giant hulking zombie.
I don't even think the Matrix was out yet, or if it had been out, it was probably too recent for them to have changed the game, so they must have known ahead of time, like, you know, they just made this character and they're like, well, maybe like one of those red leather jackets with the zippers like Michael Jackson had in Thriller, and they tried that and they're like, no. Maybe a neon green vest with a bunch of fringe on it like Macho Man Randy Savage, and they're like, no. And finally they just settled on, ooh, long leather coat like some kind of cowboy from hell.
Wyatt Earp pulled it off. Why can't the Nemesis?
Yeah.
Now, the two options you just presented would have been way better. Or maybe if the Macho Man was just chasing you, that would have been better.
I would buy that game immediately. That is a shut up and take my money moment. If you just have a game where you're doing whatever, but you're under the constant threat that Macho Man Randy Savage is going to break through the wall, be like, yeah! And start messing you up and just pummeling on you.
And right before he shoots the missile, all you hear is like, ooh, yeah! And then, oh no, a missile!
It would be like that Skyrim mod where they turned all the dragons into Macho Man, except it would just be the Macho Man chasing you around. And sky's the limit!
They did port Resident Evil 3 to the PC, so in theory, someone could get in there and do this for us.
Yeah.
And maybe give Jill some plate armor while they're at it to explain the ability to take a missile to the back of the head a little bit better.
Yeah, it would be a more logical costume choice, and it would fit in better with the events that take place in the game.
I really started thinking about that. If you're in a zombie situation, why wouldn't you break into the nearest museum and just get a full plate armor set? So you could just walk through them and they couldn't bite you. And you would look so cool.
If your enemy's main form of attack is biting, and they're not like a tiger or something that normally bites things to death, you just want to cover up. You don't need to overthink this, but you don't want exposed skin.
And I actually don't like zombie games. I'm at that point in my life where I think it's been so overdone. Kind of like I felt when they stopped making World War II games. It's like, oh, finally, you guys figured out that we're tired of this. But going back to Resident Evil 3, I actually found these zombies to be upsetting because they're not running at full speed at you. There's not that many of them, and they can take quite a few hits as they're coming towards you, and they just move at you at this disturbingly slow pace with their arms out. And if you're one-on-one, you got it. But if they get into a group and you have to start doing group management and you're dealing with the tank controls, it's a pretty terrifying experience.
Zombies have been used as sort of a metaphor for all kinds of things, from like stupidity of crowds, or when you get a bunch of people together and they get dumber.
Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good metaphor for Twitter. Just like the dumbness that comes with a lot of people all together. it could almost be like a metaphor for work. Like if you supervise people, and the more employees that you have to watch, the worse and harder it is. Like if you just have to take care of one employee, it's fine. But when you're managing a team of like 5 people, and it's just like, oh my god, you're all so dumb and pointless and trying to bite me.
Are you going to go into work tomorrow in a tube top and your yoga shorts on with a sweater wrapped around your waist and like, okay, let's do this?
Well, we are a business casual office, so it wouldn't be the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 3 is weird. I think it's good because of the nemesis and that constant pressure to keep moving or this thing's going to come just mess your world up pretty bad. And when it gets its hands on you, it messes you up pretty bad and very quickly. There's nothing like that in 2. I think 1 did a really great job with the mansion. Was one of the scariest parts about that game just because it was closed in and oppressive.
Yeah.
2 I have issues with the double characters because when you switch the characters, it's the exact same layout.
Yeah.
You're just playing with the other person, and I thought that was a waste of a lot of potential in that game. Like if you play through it once and then maybe you got to see the effects of what the other person did, the underground base in 2 is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I remember Resident Evil 1 was a game that I got when I first got my PlayStation. It was the same day. I got the PlayStation, got Resident Evil 1, got Destruction Derby, and it was a great time. It took me forever to beat that game. That was a hard game. We ended up like breaking down and buying the hint book because it was 1996, and that's how you beat games back then. And it was tough. It took us probably a few weeks, maybe a month to actually get through that game. And then 2 was coming out, and I was really excited for 2. And we got it, and I was working at the store at the time, so me and a coworker both picked up our copies of the game, and then that night I had something going on, so I didn't get to play it very much, and I got home that night and checked my email, and my coworker's just like, hey, I beat Resident Evil 2. I was just like, well, that sucks. It was like 8 hours and I beat the game.
About a year ago, friend of the show, Peter, he emailed me. He's like, hey, you want a copy of Resident Evil 2 for PlayStation 1? And I think his brother-in-law was getting rid of a bunch of his PlayStation stuff. And he sent me like a mint condition Resident Evil 2 in the double flip jewel case with all the booklets. And it may not be my favorite, but it's just cool to have those original PlayStation double flip boxes.
Yeah.
Now, Resident Evil 5, what? I think they had a town in Africa in that one.
Capcom didn't really think that one out too well. Storyline-wise, if you have all white people main characters and you're continuing that storyline, it kind of makes sense that your main character would be a white person, and then you go to Africa, and it's a town in Africa, it makes sense that there'd be a lot, mostly black people. But the visual of just having like a white guy like mowing down all these black people was maybe the stupidest thing they could have possibly done.
It was really... I've never finished 5. I was like, this is just upsetting in ways that I don't understand.
Yeah.
The gameplay was okay, but just what you were doing, this is icky.
Yeah. It was like somebody should have stopped Capcom at some point and said, have you paid attention to what actually happens in this game? Like, what you're doing, because it's not the best idea you've ever had. People are going to think you're like pretty super racist when they play this.
Konami calls up and is like, oh, I think you've gone too far. And Capcom's, wait, these guys make Metal Gear and they just said we went too far. Oh no.
Tecmo calls up, they're like, man, we thought Dead or Alive was offensive, but man, you guys are just... You're making us look good.
Yeah, I didn't play 6.
I don't think anybody played 6.
No, usually on sale you can get it on Steam or PS3. for like $2. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
its normal price at this point. I do want to play 7, but I'm waiting until I have a stretch of time where I can make
Actually play
bad
it.
choices with caffeine late at night, because I love scaring myself senseless with games. Like, there was so many times in Outlast I was like, hey, I think I made my heart stop for a second. Awesome! In the vein of horror, I don't know if you've played Dead Space.
No, I've meant to. It's on my list of like games that I should have played by now and need to get around to.
Dead Space 1 is a masterclass in horror video gaming. And I realized this when I stayed up till like 4 in the morning. My wife told me, go to bed soon. I was like, yeah, just a little more. And then suddenly it's 4 in the morning and I shut off the game and I'm sitting on the couch, and right behind our couch was a door that led to the outside. And I had been playing Dead Space so much, I just sat there and stared at the door because I was terrified of what could be on the other side of that door after my long stretch of playing Dead Space and drinking Coca-Cola. Not many games can do that to me, and I keep chasing that high.
Well, to be fair, you live on the uncivilized side of the state, so that door to the outside, anything could be on the other side of it. Grizzly bear, wolf, meth head, anything's in play out in eastern Washington.
That's true. I mean, it's fair. A redneck bear that's on meth could be on the other side of that door. You would have the other problem. There'd be like a hipster trying to ask you which filter he should pick for his Instagram photo.
We have a game that we like to play out here called Hipster or Halloween. I mean, you can only play it around Halloween, obviously, but, you see these people and you try to figure out if they're in costume or if that's just how they dress. So that's a fun one. Another thing that is a neat thing about Seattle is every so often you'll just see somebody who looks like they just walked straight off of the set of a Soundgarden video circa 1992. And it's just like, man, this guy does not want to give up on the grunge look.
That sounds pretty great.
I always imagine, when I see these people, I just imagine like in that exact same spot, 25 years in the past, is a guy from our age, like all of a sudden looking around and wondering why he can't get a signal on his iPhone and why Nirvana's popular again. And just like a time switch kind of lake house sort of thing going on.
So let's imagine for a second that Umbrella owned Seattle.
Okay.
And the zombie outbreak happened.
So they bought it from Amazon.
Yes, they bought it from Amazon. They had it lifted to them with a little drone. It was very fresh. So let's say the zombie outbreak happened. What do you think the government's most logical course of action would be to deal with the zombie outbreak in Seattle?
Probably you want to kind of barricade it off, quarantine it, maybe get some dogs. Like, I think dogs would probably like to eat things that were wandering around and made out of rotting meat. So, you probably just try to contain it, get out the survivors any way you can. These aren't super fast or super intelligent zombies. You could probably just like get some guys up on a roof with a lot of bullets and some guns, and it would almost become like a really boring day job for them. They'd just be out there like picking off zombies in like 12-hour shifts and be like, yeah, what'd you do today? I plugged 500 zombies. This town's almost starting to get cleaned up. That would probably be the way to go, I guess.
Your plan sounds very logical to me. That's exactly what I do, is contain the city, send in cleanup crews, use helicopters to take them to roofs, and maybe throw some Molotov cocktails. I guess you don't want to start a big fire. But just put people on roofs, shoot the zombies. You're eventually going to get them all. They're not going to make new zombies. Zombies don't have zombie babies, because that's disturbing. Now, you've laid out a great plan for dealing with the zombie outbreak in Seattle.
Now keep in mind, I had about 30 seconds to come up with this plan.
So, in Resident Evil 3, the United States government's plan to deal with Raccoon City, which, as far as I can tell, is maybe 3,000 people big, is to fire a nuclear missile into a town in Colorado. Mind you, it's not that far from Canada, so Canada could actually view this as an act of aggression, because they didn't tell anyone there's a zombie outbreak. Suddenly, someone just ordered a sub off the coast of California to shoot a nuclear missile at a town in Colorado. How do you explain this to anyone, what you just did?
That would be really difficult. Your first thing that you might think of is, oh, well, we'll just blame some rogue country, or we'll say the Russians did it, or ISIS did it, or whatever. But if you go down that route, like, that's only going to escalate things, because, you blew up your own city, and now you're going to blame Russia for it. Now you have to go to war with Russia, and that's not going to end well. So you kind of almost have to own up to it. It's like, yeah, we nuked our own city, and I don't think that should be plan A. That seems like a really lazy way. Like, whoever was president is just like, I don't feel like dealing with this. Just nuke it. It'll be fine.
Like, they walked into his office and said, "Sir, we sent the 7 members of STARS into Raccoon Cities, and they failed." And he was like, "Okay, I guess shoot a nuclear missile at it."
STARS was our only plan beyond nuclear missile.
They just had a chart hanging in the corner of the Pentagon that said STARS and then a line below it, or nuclear missile. Like, someone should have been like, we could come up with a plan. I hear there's a guy in Seattle who has a zombie outbreak solution. It's about building containment and shooting them. Like, Jenkins, you're an idiot.
We have 2 plans.
Except for
Plan 1A is send 7 people to deal with it. Plan 1B is nukes.
Now, did Umbrella have to go to the U.S. government? It's really hard to get a nuclear missile. There are people around the world who've been trying to get nuclear weapons for a long, long time, and all countries in the world seem to be concerned about giving unstable people nuclear weapons. Like, it's the one thing we'll work together on this planet. Russia's like, yeah, we'll help you stop this nuclear holocaust, because that's not good for anyone's economy. So, did Umbrella have to go to the government and say, hey, we kind of did this thing. Would you mind shooting a nuclear missile at it?
It seems like if you have that kind of pull, if a senator or something owes you a favor that's so big that you could get a nuclear strike whenever you needed one, I think I'd hold out. I would hang on to that favor for something better than this.
Maybe you start that line of conversation with, "Can I get some barricades and some dogs?"
And maybe some army guys.
Yeah, "Oh no, can I borrow a nuclear missile, a submarine to fire it from, and maybe a nice cover story of what happened?" That is not one that you say, "Hey, there was a gas leak," because everyone in, say, Idaho and Washington is actually going to see that mushroom cloud.
Yeah.
And be like, "Oh, hey, a nuclear bomb went off up in the mountains."
That's probably a bad thing.
And you've pretty much irradiated that whole area of the Pacific Northwest now. So all those people are going to have to be treated.
Yeah.
So the government's plan was no better than Umbrella's plan for give people city ... profit. Like, no senator gets reelected after you nuke a city in the United States.
I'm starting to suspect that the people who made Resident Evil 3 did not study business nor political science.
No. They studied the art of sweet trench coats and something saying the word STARS. So, Resident Evil. It used to be good.
That would just be the most depressing tagline in the ads for 7. Resident Evil. It used to be good.
That's pretty much what they said with Resident Evil 7.
Remember when the series didn't suck? We're going to try to go back to that.
You guys remember when the series took place in a house that you couldn't get out of? Guess what we did? So, well, we figured out political intrigue. We figured out daft business plans.
We came up with a game idea that I would buy that game immediately. I would sell every console I own to buy the console that the Macho Man Randy Savage survival horror game comes out on.
All right, well, I guess that was another fabulous episode of Cartridge Based Radio. I guess we should thank everyone who's listening to this show.
Yes.
And maybe ask them to leave some reviews on the iTunes.
Or if they happen to be working for an evil pharmaceutical company, maybe they could sponsor the show. Or buy our towns that we live in.
Yeah, buy us a town.
Yeah, I'll live there.
And, the zombie thing might happen, but that's a risk we're willing to take.
I live in the shadow of a volcano. I'm not super risk averse when it comes to my living situations.
There you go. So, thanks everyone for listening. I'm Donald. That's Brad over there. And this was Cartridge Based Radio.
All right.
Stars.